Hey everyone! Wait, hold on a minute. That's actually a really dumb thing to say. I mean, seriously, define everyone. Am I talking to the 8.1 billion people in the world right now, or 5? It's probably unlikely there's gonna be more than 30 people that watch this episode. And does that even start to count as everyone? And you might just be one person watching. But on the other hand, I guess it doesn't sound great to say, hey there, person on the internet that's watching this video. So, I guess we'll just have to stick with it. Anyway, I'm the Stick Figure Historian, and this is the Scotland series. Last week, I talked about Andrew Moray's rebellion against the English in the north of Scotland, and I touched a little on the Earl of Fife and the chief of Clan Rory, and then we wrapped up by talking about some of the legends surrounding the early years of William Wallace, who would become a leader in the South. So today, we're going to cut past the legends and talk about how he really came to prominence. Throughout his early years of fighting the English, he had gathered a group of faithful men about him. His cousin, Adam, was among them, as was Richard Lundy, Robert Boyd, and many others I can't all name right now. All brave fellows that chafed against the iron fist of English rule. And in the very same year that Andrew Moray escaped from his prison in Chester Castle, Wallace and his men made a great attack on the town of Lanark. The sheriff of that town, William Hazelrig, was slain, along with many members of his English garrison. It was a daring move, and one of the first towns that the Scots reclaimed for their own. As to the motivation of this attack, there are differing theories. The first is that it was not provoked by any particular grievance, simply a hatred against the English usurpers and a longing to take one's own country back. But others say that there was a deeper, more personal reason for Wallace's decision. According to some of the old tales, Wallace had a young wife within Lanark, and the cruel Hazelrig had killed her. Thus, the taking of the town was only a side note to the blood vengeance against the wicked sheriff. Some say, too, that he had a small daughter that grew up to marry a knight of the House of Crawford. But I shouldn't spend too much time on the legends, or I'll never get to the heart of our story. In any case, the town of Lanark was now firmly in the hands of the Scots. And because of this daring move, scores upon scores of men now flocked to join Wallace's band of outlaws. The blessing of the Bishop of Glasgow, Robert Wishart, too gave considerable power to the new young leader. For the bishop was a great leader himself, and had long set his teeth against the unwelcome advances of the English Church. And when I say this bishop was a leader, I don't just mean in clerical terms. This was back in the day when bishops actually got out there on the field with their parish members. He would hold a sword more than once in this war. Thus, you see, there was a leader now in nearly every part of Scotland. Andrew Moray fought in the north, the Earl Macduff fought in Fife, and the chief of Clan Rory fought in Argyll. And William Wallace and the Bishop of Glasgow rose up in the southwest. It was not long before tidings were brought to King Edward of this resistance. His thoughts and energy were tied up in the wars in France when the news came to him. Surely such a petty annoyance did not require his personal intervention, he thought. He sent to the sheriffs of Argyll and the northern realm to quash the work of Andrew Moray and the chief of Rory. 2 powerful barons were also sent to lead their aid in the south against William Wallace and the Earl Macduff. Henry Percy, he was the English governor of R, you may remember, and Robert Clifford. It was a lot of Sir Reginald Cheyne to deal with the problem of Moray, being the head sheriff of that province. And really, he was quite at a loss at what to do. He was a knight, trained to fight on open battlefields with ranks of cavalry and foot soldiers, not with these wild men that sprang from the woods like wolves. Sir Reginald called all the local officials to come to the castle of Inverness for a council. He needed some advice. As to what was said at that council, I don't know. But it was made abundantly clear afterwards that their plans were laid a bit too late, as we shall see. Sir William Fitzwarren was one of those who had been called to this council in Inverness. He was the constable of Castle Urquhart. He had almost a whole day's ride before him to return to his stone fortress. Surely thoughts of the plans they had made against the rebels were running through his head as he trotted along the road with his little train of armed followers. Suddenly there was a shout, and men started pouring out from the woods and threw themselves upon the English band. Andrew Moray had struck again. And Andrew's attack wasn't just a mere ambush this time. Though the English fled like beaten hounds, the Scots trailed them with relentless fury, all the way to the very gates of Urquhart Castle. Sir William must have been very relieved indeed once those iron gates had been safely shut behind him. The Scots dispersed, and all was at rights in the world of English overlording again. Until the following morning. For lo and behold, when Sir William awoke and mounted the ramparts, there was Andrew Moray again, encircling his castle. That is, the half of it which wasn't surrounded by water. For Urquhart Castle lies right up against the banks of Loch Ness. And don't even get me started on the whole monster thing. That's for another episode. And Moray wasn't alone this time. The brave men of Ross were there that day as well, under the leadership of the Countess of Ross herself. A very bold woman, this Countess. Her husband had been one of those whom Edward had locked away in the Tower. And yet, she had no fear for what might befall herself if she too fought against the English rule. When she heard that Moray planned to take Urquhart, she had not hesitated a moment in calling her husband's troops to follow her to battle. It was she who came forward this morning and summoned Sir William to surrender. Sir William declined the chance for peace. As the sun labored across the skies, he and his men must have waited tensely for the expected attack. But Moray was not a fool. Even with the Countess's aid, he did not have quite the force to storm a castle in broad daylight. He waited until nightfall, and then made his assault. But even with the cover of darkness and the courage of his men, it was still not enough to gain them a foothold over the walls of the fortress. In time, they melted away, back into the woodlands once more, defeated in purpose, but not in spirit, as Sir Reginald certainly found, when he found his farms and storehouses ablaze.